The work that we do is to help senior leaders navigate and land. We're not a search firm. We don't do placements, but we say we're more like the home stagers to make a luxury property look expensive before it goes on the market, to shorten time on the market and increase final offers. So that shortening time on the market and increasing final offers is what we're talking about today. And that's what I want to do for every one of you in this call, to really give you some insight into what's going on in the executive job market right now and how to overcome it and land faster, because it is possible to land in this market right now. We had a client actually get 3 offers a couple of weeks ago. It is possible. It's not totally stalled. And even in the summer, it's possible, but it's harder to do right now without really coming prepared. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I have a couple of team members on the call too. I'd love to shout out to Carmen Poff, is our Director of Client Success and the person that everyone typically talks to when they're thinking about working with us or learning more about us. So hey, say hey, Carmen.
Hello, everyone. I am excited to be here. So I love seeing everyone pop in and see where everyone's from. As Deborah's talking, if you have questions specifically for me in the chat, I'll make sure to get to them. I will also put my link in the chat. So if anyone wants to meet offline, I'm more than happy to have a conversation.
Great. And we love having Carmen on these calls because she speaks to every single client that we work with, and so she hears, or people that choose not to, and so she hears really what's going on in the market, from everyone across all industries, and she has a lot of understanding and knowledge of what's going on right now. And also, Alan Wohan is our lead writer. I don't know if he's on camera or not, but he is the person that if clients choose to work with us to rewrite their resume, LinkedIn profile, things like that, people get a chance to work directly with him. So say, hey, Alan, if you're, I don't know. Um,
Hi,
there you
everyone.
go.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Deborah. I was not in a position for camera today, but it is a pleasure to
Sprung this
serve
on him five
everyone and
minutes
be
ago.
able to work with such varied backgrounds and be able to help position you and get the branding you're looking for and get those next level conversations.
Thanks, Alan. All right. So thank you all for sharing where you're at and what's going on in your search. I see a lot of you have been searching for quite a while with no real um, interviews, or some of you have been looking, for several months and not getting the traction. And so I appreciate you sharing that, and I promise that we will go through some things that will help you drive more progress in your search. So I have a slide deck for part of our conversation. I want this to be an interactive conversation. You feel free to ask questions. So I'm going to start with a slide deck, but then we're going to turn it off and just speak together as a group. And then at the end, I'll bring the slide deck back up. So to get started here, all right. And I would also like to keep the camera up. So hopefully this isn't too um, cumbersome for everybody, but actually I'm going to just, there we go. Okay. So here's what's going on in the executive job market right now is when we talk to senior leaders, these are the things that number one, we're hearing from people, and also from our work with executive recruiters, the data going on out there in the search, all of these things. This is what we know to be true. Most people are spending their time applying online into a black hole without getting any responses or very few internet interview options. And there's several reasons for this. Applying online has never been a great fit for senior leadership roles because that's not typically how they're filled. So there's a lot fewer of those opportunities online anyway. The other thing that's happening right now is AI is increasing the ability for people to apply blanketly to everything. And so open roles are being inundated with AI applications that have nothing to do with maybe qualified candidates, and is overwhelming companies. And then when they're reviewing the candidates, there's too many candidates to review. And so then they're using AI tools to review them all. And so two bots are talking to each other and no humans get involved and no one gets interviewed. So I want us, if you take nothing else from this conversation, to find a better way to not spin your wheels in this online black hole. The second thing is marathon interview processes. Friends, interview processes in most industries, including PE right now, which typically move much faster, are going 7 to 9 rounds and sometimes more for executive leadership roles. This is a gauntlet. We're seeing everything from, the initial recruiter call, then the hiring team, then, maybe the hiring manager, the internal talent team, but then peer reviews, a lot of presentations, maybe to the board or to the leadership team, and then even assessments, leadership assessments, tests, presentations, case studies, all of these things in industries and functions we've never seen before. So the thing that we're working on with our clients is that you have to be ready to show up strong in these 7 to 9 rounds, which can stretch 5 months for any one opportunity, which means that if something falls apart at the end of a 5 month search process, because that's a lifetime in business, then many candidates are stuck at the starting ground again because they don't have other irons in the fire. And they put maybe all their eggs in one basket, and then they find themselves at the starting line again. And we don't want that to happen. And then finally, the timeline for senior leadership roles is stretching 8 to 12 months. So I know some of you said you've been in the 6 months, you've been in this 5 months. That's actually pretty standard right now. The job search is harder right this second. And the reason is anytime the market is uncertain, then companies slow down their hiring processes for these high level strategic roles, and also certainly high payroll roles. The problem is, you know, with the search process, you have to be ready for a lengthy process. What we do know though is that clients that work, our clients that typically go through this very specific process with us land in more like 4 to 6 months. So we can shave this in half when we're going through a really detailed process with a client one to one. But if you're, most of the people going through a DIY search right now, you can assume it's going to be 8 to 12. Also, Carmen is managing the chat. So if Carmen, if you see anything, feel free to pop in. So what we know is from our clients' average salary. So if an average total compensation package is $350,000 a year, we know that every month you sit on the bench is about 29K in lost income. So when your job search stretches on, 12 months, that's an incredible amount of money. And so any month we can shave off of this search process will add money directly back to your pocket. And that's what we want to do with these 7 steps. So I mentioned a little bit about clients working with us. What we take everyone through, and what I'm going to be showing you all today so that you can do it on your own as well, is that we have an executive edge method process. And what this is really 4 pillars, 4 phases of an executive job search to really land faster and increase final offers. There's phases to this to make sure that it's being done in a process way and not just kind of um, uh, uh, throw everything against the wall and see what sticks kind of way, right? And this process is made up of 7 specific steps. Now, these steps are not unique to our process. I will be honest with everyone. These steps are what we know to be true for every senior leader navigating the job market today that you need to land these next roles. So we're going to go through each of one of these in more detail, but I want to show you an overview of each one of these steps. And then I'd love to know in the chat, at what phase are you stalled at right now? Because everyone's search is a little bit different, right? But each one of these steps builds on each other. That way, you're building momentum throughout your search to land faster and increase your final offers. So the first step everyone needs, the first thing that you really need is to have a hyper-focused strategy. And what I mean by this is no one's hiring generalists right now. And we need to have a really clear focus on your ideal next role to then be able to build on all of these other steps. And without that, everything else, you're sacrificing efficiency and quality and offers really without that hyper-focused strategy in the very beginning. Then we need to uncover your unique value, because having 20 years of leadership in your industry and a track record of success is a table stake. It's not a differentiator. It's literally the minimum qualification. And so how are we standing out against your peers? The third is crafting a resume that commands attention. And this is not an AI resume, friends, because everyone who's building an AI resume right now is building the exact same resume everyone else is building, and it's not setting you apart. And it's been a huge problem with hiring managers being able to even differentiate people because everyone looks the same. We need to elevate your LinkedIn presence and your executive visibility. right? That if you haven't dusted off LinkedIn in a few years, or it's not optimized, or it's not telling, a cohesive story about where you're headed next, it's probably doing you a disservice. Developing a comprehensive go-to-market strategy. And this is where we're going to get into not um, focusing on online opportunities, but really building a multi-channel job search strategy that opens real doors to opportunities and not just waiting for online rejections. And then mastering the interview process. Again, 7 to 9 rounds is a gauntlet. So we need to be prepared and ready to interview at every stage with different stakeholders and audiences. And then finally, everyone's favorite is maximizing your final offer through compensation negotiation. It is possible to negotiate offers right now. Um, we've seen candidates really increase their total comp through thoughtful and pre-planned negotiation. But again, it's hard to negotiate that final offer when you haven't built on all of the other areas of your search. So I'm going to stop sharing for a little bit and we're going to dig into each one of these sections. But I'd love to know in the chat which ones maybe you're feeling stuck at or where you're currently sitting in. And I see a couple people put in their LinkedIn links in the chat too. Please feel free to do that as well, to connect with each other, build your network, things like that. Okay, step 3. Some of you here, and I've got some crafting the resume that commands attention. Yeah, that's hard. Go to market strategy. That's certainly somewhere where I see a lot of people get stuck. 1 and 5, yeah, focusing your strategy and developing a go to market strategy. Absolutely. And 5 and 6. And 6 is the mastering the executive interview. Yeah. Step 1, Jennifer, that's a step most people really struggle with, or they don't know they need it. Most people, when they're starting their job search, skip straight to telling their network they're open for an opportunity, or skip straight to writing their resume. But without building that strong foundation of your focus area, you can't really build a resume or a networking conversation that really speaks to your target audience. So we're going to dig into each of these things. And I appreciate you all sharing where you're at right now. So we're going to go through these quickly. Feel free to take notes, ask questions. If you raise your hand, hopefully Carmen can see that. But oh, Jennifer, I'm a generalist in-house for over 20 years. Saying they're not hiring them right now surprised me. Yes, let's talk about that because it's super important. And that's where we're going to start, is setting that hyper-focus strategy, because it is true. Companies are not hiring generalists right now. Right now, what companies are doing and what hiring managers and senior leadership teams and boards are looking for is leaders with specific expertise in solving the challenges that these companies are facing right now. So it's really hard to stand out when you say, well, I'm a generalist and I've done this and I've done that, and I can really help any company grow or get to their goals. It's really hard to stand out in a market and have that land when companies are struggling with very specific issues right now and they want someone that is been there, done that, can plug in and do the thing right away. And so what you want to think about is your ideal opportunity if it came across your desk, what that perfect job would look like, and really narrowing down as much as possible. And I will say this is really hard for people. People get really uncomfortable with this process because you feel like you're limiting yourself from opportunities, or you're casting too narrow of a net and you're going to miss out on things. But what it really does is allows you to build a much stronger value proposition, which we're going to get to in a minute, to really stand out above the crowd. Because again, 20 years of experience in a variety of industries and a track record of success really falls flat. It doesn't say anything. And we want to show how we can really deliver value. And we can't do that without really knowing who we want to serve. So, company size, company industry or industries, but try to have them maybe in in the same buckets. I had somebody the other day that said they wanted real estate and finance or something, and they're just too far apart. And then ownership structure. Is it a public company? Is it a private company? Is it PE backed? Is it family owned? Like getting an idea, because every type of company has different challenges in the market. So getting really clear who you're targeting is the absolutely most important step in your job search, because without that, the rest of it is really going to struggle and it's going to add months to your search. Now, It doesn't mean that you can't entertain opportunities that come across your desk, but what it does mean is that you're telling a stronger story to the people that you do want to hear your story. So that's number one. Number two is uncovering your unique value. Um, this is so important because a strong, unique value statement will really help you stand out amongst the crowd in not just your resume, but also your LinkedIn profile, in your networking conversations, in your interviews, even when you get to the point of compensation negotiation. Because what it's saying is you do XYZ for these types of companies facing these kinds of challenges, right? It's really getting clear on the value that you provide to your ideal company facing whatever kind of challenges, or how you're uniquely equipped to solve for those challenges. And so spending some time thinking about not just I'm a one that I'm going to say this kind of tongue in cheek because Carmen and I talk about this all the time, is every CIO in history has told us that their unique value is bridging the gap between business and technology and really speaking both languages. That's literally the job. That's not a unique value, right? And so, how are you going deeper into solving the challenges that is required that the company is facing? And we have a framework for that. So that's something that we can go in a little deeper. Shameless plug, we are um, hosting a masterclass starting July 1st. And I think Carmen can pop the link to that in the chat. But we do have a masterclass coming up where we're going to dig into these deeper and physically do them together over the course of 3 weeks. That masterclass begins on July 1st and is available to 10 registrants. We want to keep it really small for one-to-one connection and live feedback and all of those things. So Carmen will pop that in the chat. But any questions about the unique value before I move on? And how are we all feeling? I know I'm going fast. Okay, is it important to have a very specific title or role name? No, it's really more about the function and the scope, but physical title may change in uh, for each company. Each company may have something different, right? And so it's really more about the functional expertise and not necessarily the specific title. That's a great question, Cassandra. And Elena, I really struggle with defining the unique value of my career. Yes, shameless plug. We can do this one-on-one with you. We do have a service you can talk to Carmen about, or this will be part of uh, our masterclass coming up in July. And I know Carmen's going to pop the link to that in the chat as well.
I like David's comment that he's having a specific strategy and sticking to a plan. You got to
Yes.
stick to the plan.
Yeah, in a situation, you just jump for anything and have to just avoid that.
We can't hear you for some reason, David. A little bit, but not well.
That's probably because I was on mute or something. Can you hear me now?
A little bit better now,
I want
yes.
to pop that in the chat.
Yeah.
But yes, having that I mean, I know you spoke to that, Deborah, having that specific strategy and then really sticking to it. And,
Yes.
it's because it can be a lengthy process. And
Momentum
it's
is so important. Okay, so Tanya says, I'm very concerned that a hyper-focused strategy is not aligned with market needs. And again, if you don't have a focus, you're not valuable to anybody. But if you have a focus, you're much more valuable to the smaller subset of people you're trying to face or trying to get in front of. And so this is something we can talk more about, but the more you try to be broad and meet everybody's needs, the less you really resonate with anyone. And that's where the magic is getting hyper focused. Because when we get into the search strategy of building your resume, building your LinkedIn profile optimization, building that search strategy, go to market strategy, all of those things, without having an audience, we're just talking about our background generally, and that's not really going to stand out. So we could talk about this all day. I know we go in much deeper detail in the masterclass, but I want to get to the next steps for people that maybe are struggling with some other areas. And then if we have time, I'm happy to take some questions afterwards too. So the next one is crafting a resume that commands attention. What Carmen and I hear all the time from candidates is, well, I think my resume is good enough. I don't really need anything. Friends, good enough is not good enough in this market. And good enough is not good enough in a market where you're competing against the absolute best in your industry. You need to come with your A game. And your A game is not a resume you built on AI to match it to the keywords to the job description, because literally every other person did that too. So you're submitting what every other person has done. And rather, I want you to think about an executive resume that really, it's going to do a few things. It's going to focus on your unique value. It's going to speak directly to your target audience, but it's also going to add the context of your background, to add the kind of the storytelling of your career and the context of your background and the impact that you've delivered in a way that shows your leadership and your business value in a way that's easy to read, shows context, all of these things. This is different than your early level career resumes where maybe I know a couple of years ago, Carmen and I were still seeing from everybody maybe the resume they had out of college or B school that they've just been adding a job to every time they moved, right? And
I,
this
I
is
still
really a
see I
different
still see
focus.
those.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, I still see those. So
Um, and oh, and Jennifer, well, I guess that's my problem. Yeah, it's probably not helping because what we're seeing is that everyone is doing that, and so everyone's resumes are the exact same. I was at the SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Talent Conference, their national conference on basically talent acquisition, to hear what's going on in the industry, what's happening in the hiring, what's happening from the company side when they're bringing people in. And this was one of the biggest topics they talked about is every candidate looks exactly the same. So they can't differentiate right now. There's no way to differentiate because everybody looks exactly the same. And that's really, really hard. And so I'm saying this is not something that we're going to do. Um, oh, Cassandra, yes. Every time you ask someone for their opinion on your resume or LinkedIn profile, they're going to have an opinion to share. The problem is they may not understand where you're going, what your goals are, where you're headed, the inside of what's going on in the market. All of this is just an opinion, right? My husband says unsolicited advice is like junk mail. You can just throw it away. Like you're not obligated to do anything with it, right? Unless it's valuable to you. Um, what I would say is anyone offering you advice has to ask you a lot of questions about where you're headed first, because your resume and your LinkedIn profile, which we're going to get to, has to be future focused. It can't be a list of everything you've ever done, but it has to speak to where you're headed next and how you're uniquely positioned to get there. Now, again, this is something we do one-on-one with our clients as a white glove service where we will physically write your resume and LinkedIn profile. And it's something that we'll be talking from a uh, as part of the masterclass to support that process, right? To give you the tools you need to build your own. It depends on what everyone needs. You know, usually we work one-to-one with people and physically do it, but we can also do this through the masterclass as part of like a, done with you approach versus done for you. So speaking of the resume, then going into LinkedIn, elevating your executive visibility on LinkedIn and your other digital visibility areas is incredibly important. And it's a piece people skip. And honestly, if you're only going to invest in one, your LinkedIn profile is more important. It is the first opportunity people have to meet you and to learn about you. People are going to look at your LinkedIn profile, whether they know you or not. And we need to make sure it's communicating what we want it to communicate about ourselves. And that means where we're headed next, that we want our headshot to look like we would walk into an interview, right? And that means what you're wearing, what you look like today. I can't tell you how often we see LinkedIn profile photos that are from 10 years ago. Friends don't do that. People know. And then the second they meet you, they're trying to work in their minds the disconnect between what they were thinking and what you are. It'd be better just to be the best version of yourself today. Having a background image, having a featured section that shows your thought leadership in the space or events you've been at or media mentions or something like that. That's really all part of this visible, like executive visibility piece. When we work with candidates to build their LinkedIn profiles and their LinkedIn presence, it's three lenses, right? It's that visual piece we just talked about. It's incredibly important. You can't skip it. It's the content, certainly, to position you for the roles you're looking for and the opportunities that you're open to and the things that you're moving towards next. I I would warn you against using LinkedIn's tool for AI content because again, it's giving you the exact same content as everyone else. And looking like every other chief operating officer or CMO is not, again, going to help you stand out. And then third is the optimization, right? I know there's someone on this call. We spent time on optimization earlier this week, right? Of how are you making sure that you are showing up in all of the searches for people like you? So it's kind of a three pronged approach, right? You need to show up in these searches. You need to um, be telling the story you want people to hear about where you're headed. And then you want the visual aspect to make you look like the senior leader that you know you are so that they feel compelled to reach out. So I would encourage all of you to take a new, fresh look at LinkedIn and just see, is it telling the future focused story you want it to? Is there stuff in there that isn't serving you anymore? We can take that out. And is it visually telling the story you would want it to if that's what people saw first and they didn't see anything else about you? So, having had this conversation, how are we feeling about LinkedIn? Who feels like they need to make a little brush up, or who's feeling like it's in the right place?
We've got some good comments that are popping up in the chat. One thing that I want to add, I hear this in my head every day. If you've talked to me, I've probably said it to you in a call, but we in a conversation that Deborah actually had with an executive recruiter, he said that he considers LinkedIn the first impression and your resume your first interview.
Mm,
And that always
such a
stuck,
good
that
point.
that's just stayed with me. And I think that's a really good way to look at these two very important pieces of your marketing strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. That LinkedIn is your absolute first impression. And what is it saying? And then that resume is incredibly important because people say, oh, resumes aren't important anymore. Well, they are because at some point in the process, you need to deliver a resume. It may not be the first point, but it is going to be part of it. And it needs to look like, is it telling an executive level story, positioning you as part of your career assets in a way that you want to be positioned? Or is it something where you're like, oh, when you send it to the recruiter and say, I haven't touched this in a couple of years, but it'll give you an idea of where I've been. That's not really what you want, that's not somewhere you want to be.
One of the
So,
comments I just want you to address, Deborah,
uh,
a few back. Um, MJ says every resume looks the same, quoting you, feels hard to digest. I guess it a formatting issue? Can you talk a
um,
little bit about that? Because I will tell you, 9 out of every 10 resumes I look at have the same content.
yes. Um, think about your resume from the perspective of the very first part of your resume. Does it say seasoned leader with 20 years of experience delivering XYZ? Like, if your resume starts with that, I need you to know everyone else's does too. And the years of experience you have, MJ, the years of experience you have are not a differentiator. Again, I know I said at the top of the call, but these are table stakes. They're not a differentiator. And so the way you want to think about it instead is that, pulling that unique value, and then they all look the same right now for a couple of reasons. It's either you're using the B school one you had, where every college from Harvard to community colleges used the same format 15 years ago, 20 years ago, still same format they're using today, actually. So everyone's resumes look the same. But the other thing is anyone who's using AI to brush up their language, even if you're not using it to rewrite your resume totally, is I saw a hiring manager say that AI is blanding everyone into oblivion the other day because it's making everyone sound exactly the same. And especially if you're going through prompts to say, I want to be a CIO at a Fortune 500 in the blah, blah, blah industry, write a resume for CIO roles. Well, it's going to be the exact same that everyone else is doing. So you definitely need to think about, are you doing something that's differentiating you or are you doing something to make the robots happy? Because the robots are so overwhelmed with robot responses that the robots can't keep up. We've entered a new phase of the Matrix, friends, where there are no rules. Um, if I were to list out everything I've done and experience, it would be 20 pages long. So I focus on the potential employer. Yeah, we need to focus on the highest level accomplishments. And also, an accomplishment from 20 years ago is not going to get you an interview. If you don't have more recent relevant experience to get that interview, then you have a bigger problem, right? And so what you did 20 years ago is really not important anymore. Every company right now is looking for recency and relevancy. And think about the way we did business 20 years ago, not even in the same realm of the way we do business today. And so those accomplishments aren't really serving you, and it's just adding too much content. And when we have too much content, it's diluting our value. Um, and yeah, Florian says, doesn't it depend on which market you're approaching? Absolutely. Again, that's where we have to get clear on the focus. Who are we talking to? What are their challenges? How are we uniquely equipped to solve them? The challenges and your unique ability to solve them are going to be very different from a finance professional to a marketing professional, certainly. And especially in marketing, we're seeing that more than any other function right now, getting hyper specific. CMOs are required to have very specific experience right now. And so we're gonna move to the developing the custom go-to-market strategy, because I know that's something that many of you mentioned is as a sticking block for you. And this is something we could talk about all day. I know I'm going through a ton of things really quickly, and because I want every one of you on this call to come away with something that will help you move forward faster. So the custom go-to-market strategy, as we talked about on the top of the call, online applications are killing your job search. They're only leading to rejections. If they lead to an interview on the off chance, what's also happening is they're interviewing 700 other candidates, or they already have an internal candidate in mind, or something may change in the process. Like there's all sorts of reasons why you may not get the job, because again, you're being pitted against a huge stack. Sometimes right now up to 1,600 applications of people that do the same thing you do with the same similar backgrounds you do. You can't win in that scenario. We have a hiring manager friend who was hiring for an IT leadership role, and he had 16 applications, or 1,600 rather. And I looked up the stats, and it was actually easier to become a NASA astronaut after you applied than it was to become the IT leader at this company because of the number of applications. That's crazy, friends. And so we want to get out of this hamster wheel of constant rejection, because the other problem is when you're constantly getting rejected, it kills your ego. And a healthy sense of self confidence is incredibly important in an executive job search. No one's going to hire an executive to drive huge outcomes for a huge salary and deliver on revenue goals or whatever when they think they might be able to do it, right? And if you've been kicked too many times, that's not going to be helpful. So, what do we do instead? We do three things. There are three ways senior leaders can go to market to open real doors. And again, this is something in our masterclass and then with our one-to-one clients, we'll dig in much more deeply, and then have frameworks and tools around building this strategy. But I want to at least give you an idea of what these three channels are. The first is the one everyone hates to hear, but it's your network. It's building and activating a network. And what I mean by that is, so many people may say, well, I don't have the right network. I don't have people that can open doors for me. Okay, well, then how are you going to get in the right rooms to open those doors? And then what are we going to say when we're in those rooms? Either rooms virtually or live. How are we meeting with our current network and telling them clearly what we want? Because if it's I'm looking for my next role, let me know if anything matches something that you might think I could do. That's not clear enough, right? We need to give people very clear, actionable ways that they can help us and understand. Then the next question is, who else should I be talking to? Who should I know to open those second and third degree connections? Because without boring you with the data, what we do know is most of the opportunities that come from second and third degree connections, not from the people that know us the best. So if you're looking at your list and you're thinking, I don't know anyone helpful, that's not necessarily the case. And people can come from different areas. You have to let the world know you're looking and what you're looking for, or they can't help you. I know some of you have heard the story before. We talk about it all the time, but Carmen, who's been on our team, 3 years now? We initially met through a mutual connection who works in the vitamin section of Whole Foods, right? But she had shared with both of us what she does and what she was looking for. So you never know where these opportunities are coming from. I actually had someone who might be on this call right now sent me a LinkedIn message and said, my husband's in a search. We've been watching your videos on YouTube. We have some YouTube videos. And he went into the barber and asked his barber if he knew of anyone at the company he was interviewing for. And turns out his mom had been there 30 years and had just retired from the company and had endless insights about who the players are and what they care about and all of these things. You never know who can help you. So there's the network piece. The second one is focusing on companies and not opportunities, right? When we wait for a job to be posted, then they've already gone through their internal network, through their current company leaders, and then through potentially an executive recruiter. And so it's like last ditch effort to post online. But when we are known by the company ahead of time, then we're first in line. Because what we want to have happen is have someone look at our background and say, and instead of saying, does Florian have every um, checkbox next to this job compared to all of these other people that we need? Or meet Florian first and say, wow, Florian's amazing. How do we fit them into our company? And that's what we want to focus on is really, if we have a clear focus and target, then we know we can build lists of companies and contacts to start building meaningful connections moving forward. Again, this is something we do one-on-one with our clients. We'll physically build those lists, but that is something, if you're doing your DIY job search that you can do as well. And then the third way is connecting and building relationships with recruiters. Um, recruiters, the caveat I will say is that they are paid by the companies they're placing for to place very specific candidate profiles. What that means is they don't work for you. So they don't work for candidates and shop them around. That's just not what a recruiter does. It was maybe in the 70s, but that's not actually how they work anymore. And so what it means is that they are bound by the job spec that they have. And so I tell you all this because the mistake I see a lot is that a candidate is either looking for a new industry or a new function, or they've been out of work for a while and they're just not an apples to apples candidate, but they're focusing on building relationships with recruiters and they get the door shut in their face constantly and they feel like they're not a good candidate or no one's going to hire them. That's not the case. It's just that the recruiters are not the right channel for their search. So to recap the channels, it's, building and activating a network, it's focusing on companies and not opportunities, and it's building relationships with recruiters. One or all three of those channels may make sense for you. Everyone's going to be a little different. It might be a little bit of a different mix. When we work one-on-one with our candidates to build these search strategies, it's thinking about what is the lowest hanging fruit to build or to get conversations going the fastest. If you're doing your DIY search, think about which one of these channels or what mix of these channels makes the most sense for you.
Deborah, there's a good question in the chat.
Yeah.
Do you see that one about consulting?
Let's talk about this because I talked to a client on this call about this yesterday. You're working for your own consulting company while you're between jobs. Would you suggest to market this on your LinkedIn and CV, or is it rather irritating for recruiters? I have a couple of answers to this. I know everyone hates the answer, it depends, but it does depend on a couple of things. If you're doing meaningful work for real clients and you're delivering on an engagement, go ahead and list it. It's important to show that you're still active in the industry, that you're keeping your hands in the field, doing all of these things. Having said that, so many people have gaps right now, which is totally common because again, the job search is taking 8 to 12 months. So a gap is reasonable right now, that they're filling it with consulting roles that are really just placeholders and they're not doing real meaningful work. So many people are doing that now that recruiters just skip that because they just assume it's not real. So if you are doing meaningful work, you need to really list what those engagements were, engaged by a company in the XYZ industry to deliver on these things. Because what most people put is helping a variety of companies unlock opportunities and blah, blah, blah. And they leave it very vague. And they may be doing meaningful work, but recruiters are assuming it's not real. It's a long answer, but the consulting thing, is it adding to the narrative you want to tell about where you're headed, or is it a distractor and pushing your highest level roles down? And that's something you have to think about. Okay, so quickly, because I know we've got 15 minutes here, mastering the executive interview. I did some interview coaching this morning, one-to-one with a client. Just getting ready for some very high-level interviews internationally, and really what you want to remember is that we need to, I think there's a lot of different ways I could dig into this because again, as we talked about, the interview process is so long right now. You have to interview with so many people. But what I would say is know your audience and speak to them where they are. because not everyone is going to be an expert at what you do. And what the mistake I see happen so often is when executives have first round interview calls with recruiters or hiring managers or the HR talent person who's 22 years old, just seeing who's qualified. Those calls are just meant to make sure, are you going to hit the minimum qualifications the company's looking for? But what I see more often is that executives are trying to sell the job in that one interview, or they're frustrated because the interviewer didn't understand what they do. They were just checking boxes. Well, yeah, that is their job. They're just checking boxes. You're not going to sell yourself in that first interview. What you want to do is make sure that you're hitting the minimum qualifications, showing your enthusiasm for the role, and asking for the next level of conversation where you can speak to the hiring manager. We're not trying to land the offer in interview one. We're trying to build a human connection and be the person that they want to move forward. Then in our conversations internally, we need to remember we're not just experts in the room, but we're someone wants to work with. These are all group activities, right? It's all the group projects from high school, and no one wants to work with the smartest person in the room, but everyone wants to work with the person who's asking thoughtful questions, who's driving the conversation forward, who's done their homework, who's enthusiastic about the role. Just think about how you're showing it up in each of these. This is something we can do much deeper, again, in one-to-one coaching. We also will cover it in a much deeper in our masterclass as well, which if Carmen wants to pop the link in again, that'd be fine. And the link to Carmen's calendar if you want to talk about one-to-one work. Um, and then I am going to answer this question real quick because this is helpful. I read that the LinkedIn algorithm may not position profiles well when there's no current role listed. So yes, absolutely. This is true. So if you're leaving a role, it's helpful to leave that past role on as current for as long as you possibly can. When you have to take it down, then if you're going to add something else or a consultant, make sure that the title matches the kinds of titles you want to be found for. Maybe lead with CTO and then, consulting for companies like XYZ, right? That's how you're going to show up in searches. And again, the algorithm we could talk about all day, but that is a good point I wanted to point out that came up in the comments. Finally, negotiating your comp. This is a big conversation everyone wants to dig into. And the question I will answer for everyone right now to give you all a leg up in these conversations is the answer to what are you looking to make in this role? Does anyone struggle with that question? Or do you ever feel like you've left money on the table because of this question? I'd love to see in the comments. Yes. Okay. Yes. And it's common, right? Is no one always. So the goal, again, of all of our work, whether it's one-to-one with candidates or whether it's these group cohort masterclasses, is to shorten time on the market and increase your final offers. And part of increasing the final offers is making sure that you're not capping your final offer at the very beginning of the process. Because conversations about compensation don't just happen when you get an offer. They start at the initial conversation. And the way you answer that impacts everything else. And so what you want to do is when someone says in these initial conversations, what are you looking to make in this role? You don't want to answer the question if you can help it. And the way you want to not answer the question is say, I'm really talking about fit right now. I'm sure we can work something out. I'd really rather just talk about what you're looking for this role, size and scope, and continue the conversation. If they push, which they typically will, then say, I'm sure you have a range for this opportunity. I'd love to hear your range, and I'll be straightforward with you about whether I fit in that range. They should give you a range. Most people will because they do have a range. If they don't have a range or they say, oh, we're still working out or whatever, that's kind of a red flag. So most often they will give you a range. And regardless of what the range is, you can say, thanks so much. Given my experience and the value that I know I'm going to be able to provide, I would expect to be on the high end of that range, right? You're fitting in the range, but you're expected to be on the high end. Because if you give a number, so if you say, I want, I'm really looking to get 200,000, whatever it is, you're never going to be able to get more than that. They're not going to they may give you just a little bit more, but they're never going to give you a lot more. You're not going to be able to negotiate up from there. And then the other thing I will say is for the love of all things holy, do not answer questions that aren't asked. And I know Carmen can speak to this too, because she and I do these daily. The conversation we have with almost everyone is, when we're talking to a candidate one-on-one about what they're looking for, and we'll say, what does your ideal next compensation look like? What do you need to get, right? And the reason we ask is to see how you need to be positioned in the market. 99% of the time, people start by telling us what they currently made or what they made in their last role. Friends, that is not the question that was asked. And you're capping your future opportunities by setting it in the past of, oh, well, I made 350 all in last year or in my current role. So I'm going to need, I don't want to make any less than that. This is not a negotiation strategy, friends. You're never going to get any more than that. And so we don't want to answer questions that aren't asked. We want to flip the script and ask what the range is and then say we want to be at the top of the range. And that gives you more flexibility to not only get the second interview because you're within the range, but also the flexibility to negotiate that counter offer when it comes across your desk, which is something we do one-on-one with our candidates as well, of really digging into offers and pointing out questions and things like that for the counter offer. How do you feel about this? Does anyone feel like they can immediately put this into practice? Yes. Okay, good. This is something that is a game changer for most people who haven't been doing it, of just kind of flipping that. If I ever get an interview, oh, Lisa, okay, we'll talk about it. Um, well, Tanya, we shouldn't be doing online applications. You're never going to win. So when it asks for on-job applications, you can do a little research on benchmarks and things like that. But I don't love to answer this question too deeply because, again, it's putting the focus on these applications and not necessarily on conversations with humans. And David, yes, you're right. We need to focus on getting interviews before everyone's at a different place in these steps, right? We need to fix lack of interviews, and then we can get to the point of compensation negotiation, certainly. So everyone's kind of stuck in a different place. Um, I'm going to go back to screen sharing real quick now that we have gone through these things. And these are the 7 steps that I want you all to think about as I'm pulling this up. I would love to know where each of you feel like what was the tip that was meant for you today? What is the either aha moment or piece of advice you're going to be able to immediately elevate your own search? I'd love to know what resonated with everyone. And then I'll let Carmen read those while I pull up the presentation.
We've got hyper-focused strategy, unique value, getting the unique value on the resume. And I think it's really important to stress the unique part. I know you talked a lot about that, but I had someone recently say to me, I know what my value is, but everyone else has the same value. And I said, exactly. That's why we got to focus on the unique value.
Right.
Making the resume unique, hyper-focused strategy, creating a focused strategy. The online approach is painful and useless. Yes, it is. It is painful.
Yes, it is.
Making
I
your
had
resume
a
unique,
recruiter
but
told me
not so
recently.
much to get kicked
Oh,
out
I'm
by the
sorry.
bots.
I had a recruiter tell me recently the modern job search approach for executive leaders is a soul shriveling experience. And it really is.
Yes. I like what Kimberly Reed wrote here, starting from the position that I want and working back instead of starting with my experience and hoping that it gets there. And that's why
Mm,
when we work with our clients, where we start with what's the goal? Let's
right.
figure that out first. What's the focus? What's the goal? Now, what do we need to do to get you there? What's that
Right.
strategy look like? What do those tools look like?
Exactly. I was in a one-to-one coaching session earlier today with someone who's on this call where the question was, how do I answer the tell me about myself in a networking call? And we had to back up to, okay, what does that ideal job look like? Who is your audience? All of these things before we can answer that question in a way that really lands with your audience. We can't just answer everything we've ever done because that's not going to land with our audience. How are we really maximizing every opportunity with so many fewer opportunities in the pond right now? How are we maximizing every shot on goal? And that's really what we're focused on. So, shameless plug for our Pathway to the Offer Masterclass. I will be teaching this directly. I'll also be joined by Carmen and a few of our team members, like Alan, like our lead coach, Matilda, to really go through a live cohort limited to just 10 participants because we want to keep it very high level and very, uh, one-to-one personal feedback. And you can't do that in a huge group. We're going to go through how to implement all 7 steps with guides, tools, personalized feedback. This will be not only a virtual cohort with class, but it'll have work in between to make sure you're building all of these aspects out. And it begins on July 1st for 3 Tuesdays. Anyone have any questions? I'd love to about anything. And I'll close this and let Carmen read any questions if they are.
So people wanting to know how to register for the class, I will put the link in here. I'm having a little bit of a technical difficulty, so I apologize for that.
I'm going to stop sharing. If the real blessing is on the call, if you want to pop the link in, that'd be great. Here, I've got it.
For some reason, my chat is frozen. I'm seeing everything come in. Oh, there we go. And it is the link is further back in the chat too, if you scroll back.
And again, for anyone who wants to work one-to-one with us, if you want the white glove support of building out your unique value, your resume, your LinkedIn, building out your search strategy, preparing for all rounds of interviews, physically going through your compensation negotiation, or any individual piece of that, you can meet with Carmen as well and talk about what that looks like.
Yes, someone wanted to know if this is if the class is the only entryway into working with us. No, it's and that's part of the conversation that if you meet with me, we're going to talk about where you are, where you want to be, where the challenges are, where those actual roadblocks are happening, and then figure out, okay, how do we get you through that? So we've got different ways that we can help you. So we dive into all of that in a conversation. And
Elena, thank you so much.
Blessing put my link in. Thank you, Blessing.
Question or a note from Elena. Thanks so much. I've met with Carmen. Can confirm it's a helpful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. It's good to see you on here. And I tell everyone that I talk to, please join our webinars and our LinkedIn Lives because they, as you can see from this very quick and full fast hour, Debra shares a lot of information. So.
There was a question by Kimberly. What if you have a conflict on one of the event dates? That is fine. Each session will be recorded. That way, anyone who has a conflict, because I know it's high vacation season, can catch up on the recording and not miss a beat. So they are, what you do, you'll get a workbook each session ahead of the session so you can work ahead or you can watch the recording later. And then each session also begins with a recap and an overview and kind of a live feedback session of what we had covered in the last session. That way, everyone can keep up. Oh, the podcast is informational too. Thank you so much. We do have a podcast. And one more person asked, do we have services where we connect our clients with exec recruiters? Kind of. We have a service where we build lists of recruiters for you and build the content you're going to send out to them. I will say cold outreach to recruiters is not very effective right now, just in this market. It is part of the job search channel, but when we work with candidates one-on-one, we also do make one-to-one recruiter connections as appropriate when they come up. That's not something we necessarily charge for, but we do have a deep network of recruiters we'll make introductions to. Oh, and real blessing, do you mind? And I say real because there's several people on here with the name blessing. Can you put our link to our podcast? And as we're nearing the top of the hour, really appreciate how everyone joined in this conversation. I hope it was helpful. I hope it helps each one of you land faster because I know it's a bear right now. And our whole goal, whether you work with us or not, is to make sure that people shorten time on the market, increase their final offers, get back to work, get their careers back on track. And we're looking forward to, celebrating with each one of you. So please keep in touch about where you're at in your process.
And there's the podcast information and the YouTube channel. So over 500 videos. Check it out. All free access. Oh, do you have time for one more question?
I do. So for people that have to hop off, no problem. For this question that came up from Florian, what is your opinion about shout out posts on LinkedIn that you're open for new opportunities? So 2 things about that, Florian. It's not a bad thing to do, but the mistake I see people do is that that's the only thing they do to do network activation, and the LinkedIn algorithm works differently. And when you post something, not it doesn't go out to your whole network. It only goes out to a small subset of your network. And so when you post something like that, some people will see it, but not everyone sees it. And it's also not as effective as a one-to-one message because people can ignore like blanket posts, but when you send someone a specific message, they're more inclined to respond. And so if you're going to do a shout out post, I also suggest reaching out to people individually in your network and sending messages and saying, hey, don't know if you saw my post. I'm making a transition. I'm looking for, and then list the very specific kind of role you're looking for so they can help you because they can't help you without a specific direction. And then ask, can we hop on a quick virtual coffee to chat about next steps or what's going on with you or whatever it might be. But send a personal message too, because that will get more responses than a blanket post. Hope that was helpful. And Cassandra asked, success rate working with clients. Love this question. So when clients go through our full process, when they're engaged in the process and they've started, start to finish, what we know is that they land in about half the time as what's average in the market, right? So typically 4 to 6 months is our timeline for most clients when they start with, you know, resume, LinkedIn, then going through the job search strategy process, interview, and all of these things. For our masterclass clients, I think the last cohort, everyone is back to work. The last person that I was waiting on land, and this cohort was a couple of months ago, announced their new job last week. So this is something that we do know to be successful. What's important to us is that it's not good for us if we work with candidates that aren't going to be successful in the market. So if you're a strong candidate and we know we can help you get over the finish line, we will work with you. If your expectations are unrealistic or there's going to be a barrier to you landing, we're not going to engage and take your money because that's not helpful for anybody. I hope that was a decent answer. Any other questions for anyone still here? All right, perfect. Well, with that, thank you all. Very informative and helpful. Thank you so much, Florian. Really glad you all joined us. Will we get the recording? Yes, we will send a recording to everyone and along with these links that we shared so that everyone has access. Thank you all.